What is going on YouTube? Bryce Builds It All here, your favorite A&P, IA, and Part 147 instructor. And if this is your first video, I am an A&P, or an airframe and power plant technician, also known as an aircraft mechanic. I teach at a 147 school in San Antonio that is not Hallmark. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what is an impulse coupling. I've been making a playlist for students or just for people who are preparing to take their oral and practical test to get their A&P. Now, if none of those things mean anything to you and you somehow ended up on this video, I have a whole playlist on all this kind of stuff, becoming an aircraft mechanic, if you will, the testing process and all the things you're going to need to know. And this video also could apply to pilots too, if you're just kind of curious what an impulse coupling is. If you ever rotate the propeller on your aircraft by hand and you hear a clicking noise every once in a while and you've ever been curious what an impulse coupling is, well, stick around and I'm going to explain it. I'm filming across a table, so please be very patient with me. But this is an aircraft magneto and what is responsible for generating the spark for ignition. So connected to this would be 4 plug leads going out to the spark plugs, 1 in each cylinder if this was a 4-cylinder, which this would be for a 4-cylinder because it's only got 4 blocks on the distributor. And this guy right here, which I can actually pull off, but I'm going to very carefully try to pull this off, this is an impulse coupling. I'm going to get more into the parts of this here in just a second, but it has a Woodruff key that lines up here on the magneto. Let's see if I can sort of fish that down in there without very good lighting. Okay, and then the magneto installs. So what it does, like I said, is it delays timing. So if I hold the magneto in my hand, this portion is driven by the gear or the drive on the accessory gearbox. So this portion is connected to the engine, and then the base plate that the flyweights are on, let me pull this one out to show you, this portion is connected to the magneto, and this is what's driving the magneto. Now there's nothing connecting these two except for, I'll show this one, this inertia spring right here. Now, when you assemble these, you don't just push them, that's the wrong one. When you assemble these, you don't just line up the key on the inertia spring and push them together. You actually have to wind them up a couple of times because they work to a badge reel that has some, if you will. So right now you're going to see there's a pawl right here on the magneto. Depending on if it's left or right hand rotation, they'll move it. But there's a pawl right here on the magneto. And when I spin this around, these impulse couplings suck. But when I spin this around, the flyweight grabs a hold of it right here where my finger's at. And I'll try to show that a little bit better if I can. Let me come around with the camera. Now, with that flyweight on that pawl, you'll notice I can turn the drive, but if you look at the input shaft of the magneto isn't spinning at all until I get to this pawl right here, and the release is going to push that flyweight off. So I'm going to try to get close to the camera. I'll try to put this in slow motion. Make sure your hand is not here because you will shock yourself, and just push this off. Now, it spun the input shaft around the rest of the way. Like I said, these flyweights on this one kind of suck. So I'm going to do that again. This time I want you to look at the input shaft, and you're going to see it flip around. Try to do this as gently. Okay? You see that happen? So that is what's going on. Now, this does 2 things for me. One is it delays the ignition timing to top dead center or just after, and 2, it helps build a kinetic energy for a high intensity spark. And I'll explain that. The first part is it delays the timing. Now, aircraft engines, they run pretty normal RPMs, or I should say pretty stable RPMs. You take off at full power, which is 2,700, and then when you go into cruise, you pull it back to whatever your cruise RPM is. I don't know your POH, 2,400 RPMs, 2,300 RPMs, like that, or something like that. And then they sit there all day. So the timing doesn't really need to move very much. So I can set it solid at 22, 25, 20 degrees before top dead center. And if you're wondering what that means, it means 20 degrees of crankshaft rotation before the crankshaft reaches top dead center, or where the piston is all the way up. So the piston is moving up and the fuel air mixture actually ignites at 25 degrees in some cases. It's different for every engine. It's on the data plate of the engine, not of the Magneto. But it continues to move up, and then the spark plugs fire, lighting the fuel air mixture, and the piston keeps moving up while that burn happens, and then all of that thermal expansion pushes it back down. But during starting, the engine is not spinning fast enough, so if the mags went off at 25 degrees, it would kick the engine back the opposite way, which is not what I want. So the first thing that the impulse couplings do is delay the timing, because look, it's grabbed, and now I'm turning the input shaft, but I'm not turning the magneto. So I'm building up that kinetic energy in the spring, and then at top dead center, or just after, the impulse coupling releases and fires the plug. Now here's what I said about building energy for a high intensity spark. Inside the base of this magneto is a magnet. The faster you spin that magnet, the more voltage it puts in the coil and the more intense the spark is going to be. When the magneto is, and I'm spinning it backwards so this doesn't grab. When the magneto is spinning just kind of like this, it's not going to generate a lot of spark. But as it spins faster, it will start to generate more and more and more spark with more intensity. So when the impulse couplings grab and I'm turning this around, it's building up that energy and then releasing it all at once to turn the magnet really fast and help generate that fast, violent spark that I need for starting. Now, the last caution that I will talk about, and the last thing that I'm going to warn you, is that if this magneto is installed on your engine, or a magneto, or an engine with impulse couplings, and you're trying to time the mags or check the timing of the mags, it's crucial that you fire the impulse couplings first. And I've shown that in the past in other videos, but I'll say it again. So if you're pulling the propeller through, trying to check that the magnetos are firing at, let's just say 25 degrees for the sake of this argument, and you get to 25 degrees and they're not firing, it's because the impulse coil coupling is loaded and it sprung, or it started to engage somewhere around 30 or 35 degrees. So that impulse coupling, sorry, I'm stumbling all over my words here today. The impulse coupling is being preloaded, but the magneto is not actually turning. So you're sitting there basically doing this with the prop, trying to check the timing of the mags, and you can't get the mags to go off until you actually go all the way around to top dead center. And then once you pass top dead center, it will fire the plugs, and then you can go backwards to that 25 degree mark where the mags should be firing. And like I said, they grab sometimes, I don't know, 40, 30, somewhere in there. But you have to be careful when you're checking your mags to make sure that the impulse coupling is not engaged. Also, when you're trying to time mags, if you move the propeller too far, and it's really not that far, like you can do it in arm's reach. If you move the propeller too far, you're going to re-engage the impulse coupling like I just did. So if I push it off, if I'm here in E gap, this is actually E gap, the mag has some resistance there, and I go moving the propeller back just a little bit too far, that impulse coupling grabbed again. And now you're trying to time your mag and it won't time. So go to TDC and fire the mag. So I hope that maybe helped you just a little bit. If you've never really seen an impulse coupling before and you weren't sure how they worked, I hope that maybe cleared it up for you. I might end this video with just showing you what it sounds like when they fire in an engine. And this is why you have to be very careful with aircraft engines. This magneto is a self-generated spark, or it's not a self-generated, a self-contained spark generator. So if this P-lead or the ground is disconnected for any reason, it gets cut, a rat chews through it, or the ignition switch is left on, this magneto is hot and is firing the spark plugs. So if you go turning it through by hand and you reach top dead center and there's a fuel air charge in there, it's gonna fire and it could start on you and leave you maimed, as they would say. So I might show that, but that's gonna do it all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you leave us a like, leave us a comment, subscribe, and as always, go build something and be easy. I am in the hangar and it can be a little loud in here at times, but this is one of our test engines. There's my magneto. Only one of the magnetos on this one has an impulse coupling, but I'm gonna put the camera kind of close, and as I rotate the propeller, you're gonna hear it click. Okay? That's all it was, and that's all it takes. So if you're ever rotating a propeller through by hand and you hear that click, click noise, that is the impulse couplings firing.